Bendy and the Ink Machine came out in 2017 and was extremely well received upon its release. Its very unique vintage art style, compelling story, and character designs help cement this game as one of the most iconic in the mascot horror series. However, unlike some of the most popular horror series such as the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Bendy isn't really talked about as much. In fact, it seems like Bendy has almost been completely forgotten about, and is only referenced as being one of the OG mascot horror series, and yet the lore of Bendy and the actual games themselves aren't talked about nearly as much as Five Nights at Freddy's, Poppy Playtime, or even Garden of Banban, despite possibly being a stronger series of games. So in this video, I'm going to dive straight into the ink and try and discover what happened to Bendy and if the games were ever really that good to begin with. Let's get started. In late 2016, Paul Crawford, also known as The Meaty, began working on a brand new game inspired by the BioShock games alongside programmer Mike Mood. This game would take on a unique vintage 1930s black and white Disney-inspired art style, with the character of Bendy being clearly inspired by Steamboat Mickey. The idea of ink creating characters would be taken to its furthest extreme in this game, with the ink literally creating life for these characters. In Bendy and the Ink Machine, you play as Henry, a former employee of Joey Drew Studios, which would also later become the name of the real-life company Bendy would be trademarked under. 30 years after Henry left the company, he is asked to come back to the studio by Joey, the owner of Joey Drew Studios, as he wants to show Henry something. After searching around for a while, Henry would find the famous ink machine, as well as a reanimated Boris dissected on an operating table. Nothing weird to see here. After solving a series of puzzles, Henry manages to turn the ink machine on, and as such, releases the ink demon, or something, I don't know. And just as Henry is about to escape, he falls through the floor and has to find his way out. Over the course of the game, Henry runs into reanimated characters like Sammy Lawrence, Boris, and Alice Angels, as well as a bunch of other ink monsters who Henry has to battle his way through, who turn out to be former employees of Joey Drew Studios. This game has a wide variety of puzzles and challenges to complete, with a couple of bosses to fight along the way as well. I personally love this game a lot, however there is something about this game that I did notice, which is something that I think some of the other games did way better and might be the reason that this game has kind of been forgotten about. The reason has to do with this game's connection to the characters. To explain what I mean by this, let's look at how Poppy Playtime connects its audience to its characters. When we first play a Poppy Playtime chapter, almost immediately in some way, shape or form, we are introduced to the character we will have to watch out for, either in the VHS tapes that play at the start of the chapters, or within the chapter title screen. This allows the audience to understand who the characters are before we even meet them in the actual game itself, and normally the characters we do meet are a lot more monstrous, being an alive toy who has murderous tendencies. Then, throughout the chapter, we are given bits and pieces to work with, which allows us to develop a connection with the character. Huggy Wuggy mysteriously disappears, but is watching from the shadows, making us aware that the threat of him is present. Mummy Longlegs is literally talking to us and is a central point in the plot of Chapter 3. Mummy Longlegs is literally talking to us and is a central point of the plot of Chapter 2, forcing us to play games that we aren't meant to win before attacking us herself. And with Catnap, we are constantly getting snippets of him peering from the shadows like with Huggy, and the characters constantly talk about the dangers of Catnap and how he could pounce at any moment. In Bendy, the only character who gets any close to this sort of treatment is Bendy himself, or I guess the Ink Demon. The Bendy cutouts that constantly move around, as well as being attacked by him multiple times, or a version of him, I don't really know. All the characters you meet constantly talk about him as this horrifying entity that needs to be feared. Even in the second game, he is constantly being referred to as the ultimate threat. And Bendy and the Ink Machine pays off with a final boss fight with him at the end. Besides from Bendy, we don't really get a chance to develop any meaningful connections with any of the characters, besides the allies, and even then, we don't really get a chance to fully develop a meaningful connection with them. Boris appears at the end of Chapter 2, and he kinda just follows us. He doesn't talk or make any interaction with us besides occasional glances and handing us a weapon, which he doesn't even hand to us. Look, having a character not talk isn't the issue. The issue is that Boris actually being in the game, and more importantly the story, doesn't really do much of the overall experience. Characters like Evil Alice and Nice Alice do get a bit more to them, but a lot of the time we aren't talking to them directly. Evil Alice works more because the betrayal is inevitable, but we don't actually have a boss fight with her. We have boss fights with a possessed merry-go-round, a buff version of Boris, and a projector who gets beaten up by Bendy. All these characters have super cool designs, and yet we aren't really able to connect with any of them except Bendy and possibly Boris even though we met like 50 versions of him. The main issue with Bendy is that it's a mascot horror game, and with such a disconnect from that mascot, people naturally just didn't care as much. Five Nights at Freddy's shocked the world with its unique characters and the experience you got with each one individually, although a lot of it had to even do with a unique style of gameplay as well. Poppy playtime, while following a lot of what Bendy did in terms of gameplay, allowed the player to have a unique experience with its characters. With all that in mind, it's no wonder people just simply forgot about Bendy. Even with the Dark Revival showing some signs of bringing Bendy back into the spotlight, the series just unfortunately didn't have enough footing to stand on, because Joey Drew Studios just couldn't get their audience to care enough about Bendy to stick around. I bet you didn't know they were making a new game. Yeah, I bet you didn't know that, huh? Naturally, people move on to the next big thing, and that's a shame, because despite everything I talked about, I think Bendy and the Ink Machine is an absolutely amazing game, and even better than the first couple of Five Nights at Freddy's game, and even Poppy Playtime as a whole. So I would highly recommend, if you haven't already, go play this game, because it's absolutely incredible, and I'd love to talk about this game more in the future and give it the attention it truly deserves. Also, they are making a movie? Hey guys, it's like 3 in the morning, but I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked this one, you should click on this one. It's pretty cool too. Please.